right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I think we should just go ahead and get this breakout session started. My name is Antonina Fenelon. I am the Stash Program Manager with MAHA, the Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance. I'm so glad to be here with Jesse and Evan, sorry. So Evan, I'm gonna allow you to start.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm Evan Diamond, and I'm the Financial Education Specialist with Cambridge Savings Bank. And I'm really happy to be here today.
And I'm Jesse Canson-Benenov, and I'm the Executive Director of Abundant Housing, Massachusetts.
So,
and I'm coming to you across the Zoom link. My name is Simone Crawford. I am the incoming Executive Director for the Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance, and I'm happy to be here.
thank you, everyone. Evan, do you want to go ahead?
Absolutely. So we're talking a little bit today about how homeownership can help be a pathway to close the economic gaps, the wealth gaps that we have in this country. And I wanted to share from my own experience because I've been lucky enough to work for Cambridge Savings Bank actually for 31 years. And what happened after the housing crisis in 2008 is we launched a really full-fledged financial education program, which I had the honor of spearheading. And one of the ways that we presented financial education was through first-time home buyer seminars. And we made a choice early on to join organizations who were CHAPA certified, which means this allowed the participants to qualify for certain affordable loan programs, getting that certification. So we felt very strongly about that. We've actually, we've collaborated with 7 different agencies throughout the years. And our overall program, we've presented to over 32,000 people in the last 11 years. And a very central mission of our bank is to increase the financial wellness of the people who live in the communities that we serve, our customers, even the employees of the bank themselves, but mainly building the community. My bank has been around since 1834, so we're very, very deeply entrenched in the community. So I wanted to describe a little bit about what I've noticed in homeownership education and first-time homebuyer seminars, some things that really help. So imagine the difference between being in a family that has had homeownership throughout the generations versus one that's totally new to it. So anything that you can say that can be really helpful to people that are new to it will give them a leg up at actually completing that journey towards homeownership. For example, using acronyms. We in the banking industry, we use a lot of acronyms to describe different things, PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, that type of thing. But really explaining how different things are broken down and not making people feel excluded because they don't know the acronym. Explaining the math of the different calculations, the why do we have a housing ratio? Why do we want to make sure that a person isn't devoting too much of their income towards their housing expense, and really working closely with each individual potential borrower. So I've had the pleasure of working with quite a few different mortgage loan officers throughout the years. And one of the things that I do is I coach them to present effectively, to listen to the questions, to honor every question, and to make people feel empowered to ask things that they're confused about. There are many misconceptions out there, not only in the housing world, in the credit world. One of the things that I present is budgeting and credit for homeownership. And what that does is it sort of compares what your expenses are as a renter versus as a homeowner. And one of the things that I introduced was, if you're trying to get your first job, you're not going to just go cold into that field and say, I want that job. You might do some job shadowing to see what it's really like. So I think it makes sense to do homeownership shadowing as well. So I advise people to have conversations with current homeowners and ask them, what is it that surprised you? What was the biggest expense that you didn't expect? And I found that the participants have found that kind of advice really, really helpful. Just the idea of assembling your team of professionals in the homeownership process is really good. And I tell people to trust their gut feeling. If you're trying to have a conversation, it could be your attorney, your real estate agent, your lender, to trust your feeling that that person is going to be available for you, that they're going to listen to your concerns, that they're going to be really interested in creating value for you. So, if you have a mortgage lender who's trying to push you into a particular product for their own profit, that's a bad sign, right? But instead, if it's someone who wants to explore all of the different, products that are actually designed to help people who are new to homeownership and find the one that offers them the best value, that's the person to go with. I've heard some of the mortgage loan officers that I've worked with have told me stories of, yeah, this person really wasn't ready to buy a home at this point, but we formed a bond and they trust me. And there's one person was calling back this mortgage loan officer every few months just to check in and say things like, yeah, I took the advice that you and Evan gave, and I've made progress with my my credit score, and I'm taking steps to improve my positioning for getting a loan. And so banks can do a lot to help prospective first-time home buyers. We're very happy to do that. The lenders have to really understand the different affordable loan products to do that effectively. And during COVID has been a really great time to even increase numbers for this because it's easier for a family to attend a first-time home buyer seminar if they don't have to get a babysitter for their kids and they don't have to arrange transportation and all that. So we've seen it's been a nice silver lining of the pandemic is that we've had an increase in the participation. So we're really, really happy, to help more and more people. And we intend to continue to do this in a really big way. And I think it's, it doesn't solve all the problems of the wealth gap, but it's at least a little push in the right direction to make yourself available to helping people learn all about this process and what it would take and what positive steps they could take to to improve their chance in realizing this dream of homeownership.
Oh. All right. Well, thank you so much, Evan. Can you hear me okay, Simone? Wonderful. So my name is Antonina. I am the Stash Program Manager at MAHA, the Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance. And we've been in existence for 36 years. And at that time, we have been laser focused on homeownership. Our mission is to educate and mobilize to increase affordable homeownership opportunities, break down barriers to facing first-time and first-generation homebuyers, and close the racial wealth and homeownership gaps. And the mission is just as relevant today as it was in passing the Fair Housing Act in 1968. We are faced with the stark realities. For decades, many have been systematically excluded from becoming homeowners. We know this because we are experiencing that in Massachusetts, as homeownership rate that we have white households at 70%, while households of Blacks, Latinx, Asian combined are at 35%. Let me say that again, this is a 2-to-1 ratio. The US average, while not as stark, needs improvement as well. Here at MAHA, we're also providing a program called STASH. STASH is a first-generation match savings program, and the acronym stands for Saving Towards Affordable, Sustainable Homeownership. And as a funded partner of the Boston Children's Hospital Determinant of Health grant, we were able to launch this race-conscious initiative. Massachusetts has one of the worst racial homeownership and wealth gaps in the nation, and we need to be intentional about closing this gap, and STASH is playing a key role in that. First-generation homebuyers do not have the bank of mom and dad, and STASH can be that resource to level the playing field with those that have intergenerational assets. Since January of 2019, We have enrolled a total of 225 participants. All enrollees must have graduated from the MAHA First Time Homebuyers course, be a first-generation homebuyer. And by this, we define that as neither their parents or guardians must have owned a home. If they did, they've lost it due to foreclosure. Their household earnings are at or below the area median income of the county where they currently live. Each participant is challenged to save $2,000 of their own funds over a 12-month period, which will enable them to qualify for an additional $2,000 towards the purchase their first home. This program is acting as the bank of mom and dad. And participants are also required to attend 8 one-hour monthly sessions of additional asset management, credit, budgeting, saving, and goal-setting trainings. The participants have each other to lean on and encourage each other as they move towards their goal of homeownership. Let me share some of our participants' self-reported demographics and savings data with you. Of our 200 participants enrolled so far, 72.5% are identified as Blacks or African American, 19% identify as Latinx, 4.5% multiracial, 3% white, 1% Asian, and this for a total of 97% people of color. 21 of our 225 participants accepted into this program have withdrawn for personal reasons. 24 staff participants have purchased. 57 others have met the savings and educational requirements, and we are hoping to enroll at least another 250 participants over the next year. As previously stated, participants save $2,000 over 8 to 12 months and are eligible for a one-to-one match at the time of closing on a home. In addition, the City of Boston offers a 2-to-1 match, increase the savings goal to $2,500 for Boston purchases. So far, the City of Boston has provided $1.6 million in funding for this race-conscious, innovative program. To reiterate, this match is a grant, and this can be used to help with the down payment and closing costs, or it can be used after the purchase for anything participants needs, such as major repairs or replenishing their savings. The demand for affordable homeownership opportunities is great. In 2018, MAHA has graduated 845 new home buyers. In 2019, it increased to 1,719. In 2020, during the pandemic, the numbers began to rise even more, graduating 2,452 participants. That is also when we went virtual. We believe that we can enroll as many as 400 home buyers per year in the STASH program with the combination of increased internal capacity and public-private sector commitments to the home buying matches. We have started this campaign to scale up race-conscious first-generation, first-time homebuyer match savings program, and we have a call to action to raise an additional $100 million in public and private funding within the next 5 years. This would enable the program to help up to 4,000 first-generation homebuyers over the next 10 years, and our goal is to increase the match from 2-to-1 up to a 10-to-1 match, which would enable participants to receive $20,000 in match money. And we are calling on others to join this race-conscious, bold initiative, innovative, to help close the racial wealth gaps. And thank you so much.
So again, my name is Jesse Kansen-Benenov, and I'm the Executive Director of Abundant Housing Massachusetts. And I'm coming to this from a slightly different perspective than my fellow panelists, and it's very helpful for me to hear about the tools and programs that they've been using to help increase homeownership generally, and also focus on the racial gaps in homeownership in Massachusetts in particular. At Abundant Housing Massachusetts, we believe that Massachusetts is for everyone. That's our slogan. Massachusetts is for everyone. We believe that every city and town in the state of Massachusetts should be open and welcoming to everyone, regardless of race or income or age. Sorry about that. So again, we believe that every community in Massachusetts should be open to everyone, regardless of race or income, age, ability, or any other life experiences. We heard about the racial gap in homeownership in Massachusetts, which is exacerbated by the fact that we have an overall gap in the availability of homes in greater Boston and throughout the state of Massachusetts. Going, just stepping slightly above, looking not just at homeownership and not just at race. Overall, we have more households that live in Massachusetts or want to live in Massachusetts than we have homes for them to live in. The Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC, a few years ago, did an analysis of a demand for homes in Massachusetts over the next 20-25 years. And they projected that by 2040, we would need, throughout the state of Massachusetts, 500,000 net new homes to keep up with demand for housing in the state. And of that 500,000, 435,000 of it would be in greater Boston. That's Boston and the 100 cities and towns that surround it, where the bulk of population is in this state. Despite the fact that when you travel through Boston or Cambridge or a couple other areas, you see cranes in the sky and it feels like there's a building boom. The fact is we're not keeping up with that demand. I've seen varied statistics. I haven't seen anything formally published yet, but a year and a half or 2 years ago, probably 2 years ago because it was pre-pandemic, I had a conversation with some data folks who were looking at the rate of permitting for new homes in Massachusetts, and they realized that at the rate we are building new homes right now in Massachusetts, we're on track to fall 100 to 150,000 homes short of that 435,000 new homes we need for everyone who lives or wants to live in greater Boston. So there's a gap. There's a gap in the availability of homes today, and there continues to be a gap even as we build new homes in a few communities like Boston and Cambridge. And so what does that mean in reality on the ground? We've all heard the stories of people competing for homes, to purchase homes or even to rent homes. We hear the reality of someone may have bought a home 20 years ago in the neighborhood of Boston for $200,000 and is able now, 20 or 30 years later, to sell it for $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. And when they sell it, they're selling it to buyers who have the ability to pay in cash, to not to go without contingencies, to go without inspections. It's because when you have an incredibly limited supply of homes, it pits competition between high income earners and working class people. And when you force working class folks to compete with wealthy folks for housing, it will always be the wealthy folks who drive up the cost of housing and outcompete working families and households for that limited supply of housing. And to get to the aspect of the racial gap in homeownership in Massachusetts, that working class is heavily populated by people of color. We were talking a little bit before the panel about the recent Federal Reserve Bank study that said, I believe it's in the city of Boston, the average family assets for a white household in Boston was what, $250,000, whereas for a black family, it is $8, single digit $8. And so while there's certainly a class aspect to who is suffering the most from the lack of homes in Massachusetts, there's also, as we just heard through the goals of the STASH program, a racial gap in that as well. So what do we do about it? We need to make sure that every community in the state of Massachusetts is doing what they can to help build homes for everyone. We need to make sure that in communities across the state, the vast majority of which don't allow apartment buildings to be built, that they have to have zoning that allows apartments. And I don't mean apartments just for rentals. It can be multifamily condominiums as well. We need to challenge people's assumptions around what's the ideal type of home to live in. We have a long history of prioritizing large, sprawling, suburban, single-family homes. Well, if we want to provide enough homes for everyone, we need to think about other ways, on other types of homes we can build. We can build smaller homes. Like I said, we can build condominiums and multifamily style buildings. We can build accessory dwelling units or granny flats, in-law flats. There's a variety of tools we need, but these tools are frankly illegal in the vast majority of communities across the state of Massachusetts. And that's exacerbating this homeownership gap, not just by class, but by race here in Massachusetts. And so that's what we're focused on at Abundant Housing Massachusetts. I think I'll leave it at that. And I don't know, I guess we have a discussion, or we can open up to questions from the audience.
Yeah, I think this sounds great.
Yes, I'm on. I am on. I am here to assist in answering any questions pertaining to the Race Conscious Stash Savings Program at MAHA. So if anyone on would like to, have a discussion around how we can, have this be funded so that those that can't afford, based on the barriers of having some funding available to enter into that housing market because of the prices. If there's ways that we can, discuss more about how we make this even more available and widespread for the state of Massachusetts, we're open to that. But we can talk a little bit more about those barriers, right? We can talk about the barriers that low to moderate income individuals, people of color, communities of color face as they think about homeownership, especially around this time where we're in with COVID-19 and how it has truly laid bare for all of us to see just how impactful having your own home could be. So I'm open to having that kind of discussion as well, and willing to hear suggestions.
There's a few people on the Zoom. If anyone has questions, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and pose your question.
So while we're here, and we would love for this to be a conversation instead of us just talking at our attendees. There is a potential right now because of COVID for us to have some once in a lifetime funding through the ARPA funds to make some real good decisions about the housing stock, and on the buyer side assistance. Do you, Jesse, do you mind just talking a little bit about what potential you see there for us to utilize some of those funds?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that I'm the best position to talk about the ARPA funds, unfortunately. I've been a little bit removed from those conversations. I guess I would throw it back at you. Are there opportunities? Well, it seems like there would be opportunities to expand the stash program through the ARPA funds. Is that something that's been part? I know every group, every nonprofit, every advocacy coalition in the state right now is putting together their wish list. Does it seem like there's a possibility of expanding the stash program, or is that even something you're asking for through the ARPA funds? Seems like a great opportunity.
It is a great opportunity, and it's a dream of ours, definitely. It takes a lot of advocacy to really get it to bubble to the top, and so every opportunity or chance that we receive, we try to utilize those opportunities as best as we can. And so yes, we are trying. There's no promises there. There's nothing to say we see it moving in the right direction or the wrong direction, but we are advocating as strongly as we possibly can.
You know, what we tend to look at on the abundant housing side is what are the local mechanisms that communities can use to encourage more homes to be built, and rental housing as well as homeownership. We see a great opportunity that came through the legislature earlier this year, and that they're now mandating, you know, like I said briefly in my comments, most communities in Massachusetts don't allow apartment buildings to be built anywhere in town. And that obviously limits then the supply of homes throughout the state. So one of the things that the legislature did earlier this year, and this isn't on the funding side, this is on the regulation side, I guess, of land use. They've now mandated that every community with MBTA service has to have one zoning district that allows multifamily housing or apartment buildings to be built by right. That means no special zoning approvals through the town. You still have to get building permits and build to building codes, safe buildings, but you don't have to go through a long zoning approval process. Additionally, this multifamily zoning district will have to be placed within half mile of transit. So, you know, focusing on sustainability, getting people out of their cars as well. Because it's zoning, it doesn't mandate whether it is rental or home ownership. And I think, you know, the tendency in recent years has been for developers to build rental housing in Massachusetts, or at least the larger scale multifamily apartments that you see built tend to be rental housing, you know, in places like Boston, Cambridge, and the urban core. And so I think as this program, the state is currently working, the Department of Housing Community Development, on writing guidelines for cities to implement this rule, where they will have to have a zoning district for multifamily housing. And then the communities will have to react and put that into place. But I think there's going to be an opportunity, since we're talking about homeownership today, there's an opportunity for advocates to think about how do we push the towns or the developers that are utilizing this new zoning to actually build homeownership opportunities, or at least a portion of their new projects as homeownership, and specifically, I guess, to direct potential homeowners to these innovative programs and products that are available to help get folks who may not have had homeownership, access to homeownership in the past, to occupy these new buildings that will be built. So that's an opportunity that I see sort of from the perspective of zoning and land use regulation that we tend to focus on.
Jesse, I think this is really great what you're doing at Abundant Housing, and I'm wondering if part of what this will accomplish when we have more affordable housing is closing that gap between the income restrictions of the affordable loan programs. Yeah. You know, there's a limit in how much money the family earns to allow them to qualify for this these favorable terms of an affordable loan. So that's sort of a starting point for using numbers that are generated from that, like what the income restriction is, to make a house fit into that. Yeah. Could be a challenge. That could be a goal. I'm sure it's something that you guys work on.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the, I don't know how well they can hear us with not this one, but one of the challenges in Massachusetts is that we do, you know, we're lucky on the affordable housing side. In Massachusetts, we have many community development corporations and other nonprofits that build affordable housing, and our state, relative to others, funds affordable housing more. It has more programs to produce affordable housing than many other states. So we do a lot. We certainly don't build enough affordable housing as we have families in the state who would be income eligible for them. But relative to other states, we do better. Also, we build a lot on the other end, a lot of high-end or luxury housing, incredibly expensive housing. Part of that is because it's so costly to build that type of, or any type of housing in Massachusetts, because of the cost of materials, labor costs to some degree, but also just the time it takes to permit the construction of new housing. All the costs that those market rate or high-end developers have to pay to build gets passed on in terms of the ultimate rental or homeownership price, meaning it goes to luxury. So we have a gap, or what we call the missing middle. We're not building housing for those people essentially that fall into that donut hole, for lack of a better term, of not income eligible for affordable housing programs, but certainly can't afford luxury housing. And so one of the things we need to do is not just build more homes, but make it easier and less costly to build those homes so that the overall price, even of market rate housing, goes down and people, middle incomes, can afford that as well. And then I would add to that, there's a lot of conversation. I live in Jamaica Plain, and we hear that there and in Boston, throughout Boston, around making sure that the affordable housing that's built is reaching the people who truly need it. So like making sure it's targeted to lower incomes than it is today. And that's a very important policy initiative. But we also then need to make sure that those folks who may be at 60 or 70 or 80% of area median income and qualify for affordable housing today can afford the cost of housing on the market if the programs are getting scaled down to people to 50, 40, 30% of area median income or lower. I know it's a lot of numbers and stats. I hope that makes sense, but absolutely, we have a housing gap. We have many housing gaps. We have a racial homeownership gap. We have a gap in terms of the number of homes versus the number of households, and we certainly have a gap in terms of that missing middle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just before we go on, we are at 2:17. I know that we had scheduled to be from 1:15 to 2:15. I would like to also, let everyone know that I have another meeting that I have to jump on. So do we have a moderator in the room?
I think I'm functioning also as the moderator.
Okay, in this case, I would just ask you to have, each of the panelists just say one thing that, you'd like to see change or something concrete that you'd like to see as we move forward in this process of fighting for housing.
Yeah, sure.
I think we can hear whether or not you switch the mic. It's
Okay.
very clear. Yes.
All right. So how about I just lay it on the table? I don't see an on off button. Okay. Great. I think as someone that is in the program and on the nonprofit end, I see a lot of first-time home buyers who are coming into our doors at Maha, taking these classes, hoping to change some of their own behavioral practices as it comes to savings and budgeting. And so when we are preparing them for what the home buying process looks like and how to present themselves and ensure that they have the tools, the savings to go out there and purchase a home, I just hope that we're able to increase the housing market so that these individuals who are graduating from our classes and are prepared to go out, they're gonna not have to face so much homeownership bidding wars, right, that exist out there. We always get the question in our courses as to whether or not, folks can buy land in Massachusetts and just build land like they can do in southern states, or the idea of the more innovative ideas of creating tiny homes and RMV homes and like buying a bus and being able to reconstruct that, or, so there's a lot of people, especially first generation home buyers, who are thinking innovatively, thinking sustainable, and want to be able to consider these options. And those, like you said, some of them are illegal in certain towns in Boston and Massachusetts. And so my goal from all of this is that I think homeownership is definitely achievable for the first-time home buyers, first-generation home buyers. And I think that with more resources and more federal funding through ARPA funds and other means, that we can definitely create sustainable, innovative homes for folks who are okay with smaller square footage, or want to be in, don't really care so much for being in, luxury apartments or things like that, but want to be able to really plant roots. I'm a city, I was born in the state, born and raised in Mattapan. And I'd love to be able to purchase a home and, you know, place my family in the city, but it's just too expensive to do so. And so I know that is shared amongst a lot of people who live in the city. So again, just hoping that there's options, more options available once folks are educated, informed to make certain homeownership decisions.
Thank you.